Hello, Matt Elliott here.
Hi, Alan Smith here.
Hey guys, Ian Hume here.
Hi everybody, Jerry Taggart here.
Be sure to watch
Chris and Leicester Till I Die TV
for all the latest Leicester City news and information.
You can also subscribe on YouTube and various social media channels.
for the latest updates and news on Leicester City Football Club.
Come on, you foxes!
Leicester Till I Die TV, your first choice for everything Leicester City. Tune in and join in now.
Right, Chris.
All right there, all right, the back. How the devil are we all? Well, I hope. Good news. Whatever happens this weekend, we're not going to lose the lead again, are we? We're not going to lose. You know, always look on the bright side of life. That's what I say. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you very much. Please make sure you've clicked that subscribe button and smash the likes on the video. It all helps the channel. And if you are listening on catch up on podcast, then thank you very much. Apple, iTunes, Spotify, Google, Podcast Addict, to name but a few. We are on all the main podcast platforms. Thank you for watching and listening. This is where you can find it.
Watch us on YouTube. Listen on your favourite podcast platform. Or ask your smart speaker to play the podcast Leicester Till I Die.
Subscribe, like, follow, and join in now.
Yeah, we are everywhere, like a bad rash. Do you want some good news? This is
Leicester City FC on this day in history with Leicester Till I Die TV.
Yeah, I thought I'd start off with some good news. 26th of January 1991, and both my guests are way too young to remember that. Unfortunately, I do remember it. The David Pleat years. God, they were bad. You think it's bad at the moment. Go and ask your dad, kids. David Pleat years. But on this day in 1991, the 26th of January, a 3-1 defeat at Philbert Street against Blackburn Rovers spelled the end of David Pleat's spell as manager of Leicester City. David Kelly scored City's goal and supporters protested as the Fox crashed to a defeat that left them in deep trouble at the bottom of Division 2. So, the good news was we got rid of Pleat. It was never a good choice. This is Leicester Till I Die, and it's the Across the Pond show, and we'll be bringing our guests in straight after this.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the main event of the evening. 60 minutes of football fun and banter with Chris and Leicester Till I Die TV. Are you ready? Let's get ready to rumble.
Let's start by saying hi to Zach, our Canadian Fox friend. Good evening, sir. How are you? No, it's Alex.
It's Alex. No, I'm not doing too bad. How about yourself?
Well, obviously not very well because I can't read. Right there. I tell you what, I should do this, shouldn't I? And then where are we? Then I'll remember. It's my age. It was the shock of reading about David Pleat. You see, that was the problem. You're too young to remember those years.
Yeah, no, unfortunately. Fortunately, I am. I was born in '93, so it was a few years before I was even born. So, it's kind of a positive, I think.
It was. It was not the best of years. It's not the best of years. So if I can get this gentleman's name right, Zach. This is Zach. I knew we had a Zach coming in. Zach, who is our American Fox. Good evening, Zach. How are you?
Doing pretty well, guys. How are you doing?
Not too bad. Not too bad. You had an outbreak of COVID, I think, where you worked, didn't you?
Yeah, it's just that being in the restaurant industry, you have if one person gets sick, then some other team members will get sick, and then if, let's say one person goes from one store to another, they get sick, and with my region having a lot of factory towns, to where it's like someone has a family that works in a factory, then they have their outbreaks, and it's just all just a huge giant mess.
Right. Well, that leads us very much into the start because it is our monthly review. So we're going to look back at the games in a second, and then we'll end up with the transfer window or the lack of the transfer window this year. But I want to start off and talk COVID because obviously, although it has affected this season. I mean, there's over 20 games now that are still to be played. I mean, you look at the table and it's a total and utter waste of time because Burnley have played 17, somebody else have played 23. We've got a couple of games in hand, so the table's not worth looking at. I mean, do you think I'll start with you, Alex, do you think the way the FA have handled this is bad? I mean, I know they're looking at it again, but it's been a bit of a joke, hasn't it?
I would say it's extremely disorganized. The way I kind of view it is that we're the year 2 of this in this pandemic. It's not like this is like 2 weeks old. You know, we've dealt with this for some time, so you'd expect that they'd have some sort of plan in place. And I think that's the more frustrating thing because, like you said, you look at the table and really it's not even useful to look at because there's so many disjointed games all over the place. You know, like you said, Burnley's only played like 17 or 18 games, whereas other clubs have played like 23 games. So you can't really get a fair assessment as to who is where in the table because it could change in a matter of a week. And that's just for, clubs catching up. I'm definitely critical of it because I feel like they've had the opportunity that they could have fixed it. And it's frustrating for fans and supporters because there's been games that have been canceled within the hours of the game kicking off. And, for myself personally, if that happened over here in Canada, I'd be frustrated because, traveling to some of these matches, is not like a 30-minute drive. Some fans are traveling across the country in order to see these games and then finding out, a few hours prior to the game that it's been canceled. It's a lot of money on on the supporters, and that's affecting the fan bases. So if I'm them, they need to come up with a concrete plan that's going to stick. So that's my 2 cents on it.
Zach, I mean, they've made some changes today. I think they've come out and said that teams need to have at least 4 COVID-19 cases to get matches called off, and certain managers have accused other teams of using it to their advantage. Do you think some teams have been a little bit creative with their numbers?
Yes, I personally feel that with some of the clubs that had their matches postponed, and then all of a sudden they're going to go and use some of their players that might not have tested positive and go, oh, we're going to put this person out on loan. We're going to go and sell this player, and so they can say, well, we don't have enough fit players because either everyone's out sick or they're on international duty with AFCON, and it's just a nightmare that some clubs are able to kind of get away with some things, while some other clubs that if they can try to go play some fixtures, they're told, oh, you can't because this person's not registered, this person's on the academy team, and it's just there's a lot of inconsistency. And I felt like, too, that with the Premier League, they should have looked at the other leagues in the world and go, okay, this is what's working for the Bundesliga. This is what we're working for La Liga. Let's see what we can try to do to help format our situation to figure out, okay, how many players can be out before we have a match postponed and who can call for a match to be postponed. And I just felt like that each case is so different.
And do you think, I mean, it's kind of will work for us, but Alex, obviously, when we now play games, we're going to have players back that weren't available when the original match was going to be played. So we should have, say, James Justin back who is going to be a big plus for us. Well, he wasn't available, let's say the first, and when we should have played the game originally. And I know Ralph Husnau, the Southampton manager, suggested that the games that are played should be played with the same players that would have been available had they not had COVID at that particular point. And I think that's quite a good idea.
See, I'm 50-50 on that, because you can't really predict as to what your club's, your squad's going to look like on the new set dates. We could be talking about, yeah, we're missing James Justin back then, but like, who's to say, in the next week or so, with international duties and just training in general, we could lose 3 players. And all of a sudden, we're going into that match, and, the other manager's like, well, these aren't the players that were fit for, would have been fit for the match that was postponed. But, Brendan Rodgers and company could come back being like, yeah, but we're missing Jamie Vardy, we're missing Patson Daka, we're missing Yuri Tillemans, and Kasper Schmeichel's also out too, but they were fully fit prior to the postponement. So I feel like it goes hand in hand. There are some positives when I look at it, but at the end of the day, there seems to be so many new ways that managers and clubs are trying to cancel games. And in a non-pandemic world, I think that this wouldn't even be a question. If you had a couple players out to the flu, a few out to injury, a few out to AFCON, et cetera, the Premier League wouldn't be like, well, we're going to have to postpone these matches. They'd be like, you have the players, maybe they're in your academy, we're going to keep going with this. And I feel like in such a condensed season and a condensed year, there's so many games between Premier League and international, and you have the World Cup at the end of the year. It's just you can't take a chance on more postponements and trying to MacGyver certain ways. You just got to just roll with the punches. So as much as I see there's positives in it, I feel like, you got to let the players play when the games are available, because at this rate, I think there's just going to be more injury issues at that rate.
Good point made there, Zach, by Alex. If clubs are sort of being a little bit underhand, they're not helping themselves, because like we've had a couple of games postponed. We've played one, which we'll talk about in a bit, unfortunately. We've still got a couple to catch up on, but we've got Europe round the corner as well. So all these clubs are doing is literally adding, because we can't. Well, maybe we can extend the season, but the players need to have a proper rest. We've seen last year that if they don't have a full off season, then it's not good for them. So all they're doing is causing their own fixture pile up.
I agree. It's just that with not only with, this is obviously we're going to be looking at this later on today, but it's just with having 4 to 5 fixtures of ours for the Premier League being either rescheduled for, let's say, COVID or for other competitions, it's going to cause a fixture condensation around the end of April and of May, and it's going to be just hard on everybody. And I know with us having 2 European matches coming in February, it's just going to make things even worse. Trying to think here. And just, I really think that if more matches are postponed, I just really don't know if the Premier League's going to go and try to extend, especially with what you mentioned with the World Cup being in later of the year instead of the traditional summer.
Yeah. One other thing that I thought, Alex, was, and again, we'll touch on this when we look at the Watford game, is the FA say, right, you've got to register 25 odd players, and it's only those 25 players you can use. Funny enough, when we came to the FA Cup, you could suddenly use any player you wanted. Could the Premier League not, if you like, just say, right, you can register 5 more players, but they've all got to be from your academy or something. That's another way around it, surely.
Yeah, and you know what? It kind of reminds me of what the NHL did over here in North America. So what they eventually did was with the pandemic is they created this thing called the taxi squad. And the taxi squad was was an additional set of a group of players that could be brought in at a moment's notice. So say, a player or two contracted the virus, They wouldn't be, panicking at the last moment, being like, "Yo, we just lost 2 players. We need to get these 2 players in." They'd be like, "We have a group of players set aside, ready to go. We're just going to pull them off the taxi squad and bring them in." I think that would be a great addition to the Premier League, or like just to football in general, until this whole thing is sorted out. Because if you have 5 players, let's use 5 players per se, like you mentioned, on this taxi squad, and you find out 2 players test positive the day before the match. There's no panic. You go, okay, you guys are going to come in. There's no headache. There's no fear. Even if 4 test positive, you just bring the 4 in. It's a simple fix to an issue that, like I said, could easily be avoided. And it's just, you kind of wish that the FA and all that, they just kind of thought about this months in advance. It just seems like it's ironic that all these issues are still occurring so far into this pandemic.
Funny thing is, Zach, and everybody's having to go at Arsenal, saying like, "Well, they said they've got no midfielders, and yet they then go and loan Maitland Miles out." But we have the same thing with Benkovic. We were saying we've got no defenders available. I know whether he's good, bad, that's another story. He was with us at the time, and yes, he wasn't registered, but he couldn't even get on the bench. We had two goalkeepers on the bench, I think it was, for the Watford game. He couldn't even make it onto that. So there's so many grey areas, isn't there?
Yes, and not only with just us, it's just like, it feels like with some of the moves that we've done to say we're going to put this person out on loan, we're going to go and allow this player to go do this. It's despite all of our injuries, despite with everything that's going on, I just found the moves to be just very confusing. It's like, why can't we just use them, even if, let's say, they're not the kind of caliber that we're used to, or let's say they're not on the same level as, let's say, like a Fofana. It's still something for us to try. I did see a stat earlier today that from the time of the start of the season to now, we tried over 20 to 30 defensive pairings in matches in all competitions, and it's just completely wild.
Yes, I mean, we'll come on to talk about certain players in that position later, but it is like I say, totally weird. But I get why the Premier League have said, sort of, Alex, like, you've got to name 25, because if you look at Manchester City or Chelsea, Chelsea have probably got more than 25 players out on loan. It would give them an advantage if they could play any of their squad at any time against a team like Norwich, who couldn't afford that sort of size squad.
Yeah, you know what? I do agree with that, because it doesn't really handicap any of the teams, any of the clubs. But what it does is that it makes it relatively fair. Because, like you say, like Man City could just go out there and be like, we're going to buy 5 new players and we're just going to have them. They're just going to practice with the club, but they might not play, and they're going to make bank. And, Norwich is going to be like, we have 25 players. We might be able to afford one more, but that's a big maybe. So I feel like it just kind of equals the playing fields in the sense of man, on manpower, in the sense, like not on quality, because let's be serious, Man City or a Chelsea are far more superior than Norwich, but it just kind of levels the playing fields in that scenario, like manpower wise.
Yeah. Well, I've put it off as long as I can do, guys, but we've really got to take a look at the month. And thankfully, there wasn't many games played, but those that were, let's just say it tested our moods, didn't it? And thanks to Zach for doing this particular graphic for me. But it just shows there that we had. I don't know if you guys can see that on your screens, okay or not, but we actually had 3 games postponed, and we played 3. Started off with a postponement on the.
It should be the 1st of January. That's my fault there.
I was looking at that. I was saying Norwich. I thought it was Norwich, and I hadn't even noticed the 23rd.
It's like I sent the correct graphic on Twitter, but I forgot the email, so that's on me, guys. So I apologize for that. But yes, it was supposed to say January 1st for Norwich at the King Power.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Obviously, I thought I was drunk then, but I'm not. We had obviously the Watford win, a couple of postponements there. Poor Burnley. I don't know whether. I think this is Burnley's idea of how they're going to stay up. Is that they're going to still be playing their games in 2 years' time. So we can't get relegated. We've not played all the games yet. And then unfortunately, we did play a couple of games. But Zach, coming to you first. I mean, Watford, it was a potential banana skin in the FA Cup. The return again of Ranieri, who of course is no longer at Watford. And we did have a full squad out there, but it was made up of a lot of youth. I think we finished the game with 6 youth players or academy players on the pitch, but they did us proud.
Yes, it's like with it being the first FA Cup match that we played since winning the title. It was one of those games that we have to go and not only just win, but also win in a dominating fashion to show that our winning of the FA Cup last season was not a fluke.
Yeah.
And with it being at the King Power against Claudio, it was definitely one of those moments that it was definitely bittersweet to kind of see Claudio on the other side of the technical area, especially since it's our second time seeing Claudio at the King Power this year. But with having all those academy players, did well, only conceding 1, and just it felt like a complete game almost. Besides not having a clean sheet, and it kind of gives us a little glimpse into the future of, okay, if let's say we lose Tielemans, we got this guy in place. Let's say if this player does not step up like we thought we were, then we know, okay, then we can take a look at this guy and just develop him for the future.
Yeah, I did my Tuesday blog following that game for the BBC. If you go on the BBC website, it's they call it the Tuesday Talking Point, and I do it sort of 3 out of 4 weeks a month. And I said then, Alex, that the future's bright, the future's blue. I mean, you know, I know you can say, well, it was only Watford or whatever, but they were a Premier League team, and our youth players are out there. And our youth players put a lot, or not a lot, that's being unfair, but our youth players, they put a certain couple of full-time pros to shame.
Yeah, and I think when you look at, like, you know, the young talent coming up within our ranks in the squad, it's super promising, because you look at like players like Brunt, who, you know, did excellent in my opinion. So you got him, and like, you know, I think everyone tends to forget how young Luke Thomas is. You know, he's young. You know, Dewsbury Hall is young. He's just incredible. But one of my favorites, and I know he didn't play much, but it was Will Alves, and he's 16 years old, and he comes on in the match. And I actually tweeted out during the game, I'm like, 16-year-old Will Alves is coming on to play in his debut for Leicester City. I said, what were you doing at the age of 16? I'm like, for me, I was definitely not doing this.
No.
I think it's incredible because, like you said, the future is bright. You know, I think one thing that Leicester is so good at doing is developing young talent. And this is just another case of, you know, just proving that it's true, because I think in the next couple of years, you're going to see these young talents coming into, you know, the squad, you know, after a few loan spells. And I think they're really going to help change the landscape of the club.
Zach, I mean, to me, those that follow me on my shows will know my thoughts on a certain Spaniard that plays for us. But I mean, he got taken off and replaced by an academy player, and to me, I said at the start, you know, certain players were showing up, and he was one of them. And those youngsters, they've looked at it and said, "This is our chance." And I don't know what it is with Perez, but is his time coming to an end, do you think, at Leicester?
I think so. I definitely think that his time is coming to an end. I just don't know if we're going to be seeing him go, let's say, this summer window or with the next year. But I just think with his performance in the FA Cup match, it's beginning to the end.
Yes. Neil, good evening. How are you? You stolen Alex. Chris haven't stolen him. He's just out on loan, but he's coming back. This means war. Or don't send Ant for me, because I'll never see him coming if he comes at me behind a wall. And, Mike says, "Good evening, Mike. How the devil are you, sir?" It's put me off what I was going to say now, Neil. I mean, a lot of people have said, and a lot of people have started after another game we're going to look at in a bit about Tielemans, and he's going. I think we've got to accept the fact if he was going to sign a new contract, he would have done it within 12 months that we've been talking to him. He is going to go. I don't think he'll go in this window. I think he'll stay until the summer, because I think he wants to go. He wants to go for Champions League football. And to be honest with you, I will wish him all the best, because that's what he wants to do. He wants to better himself. And I don't think he's going to say, yes, I'm going to go to Man United, because he doesn't know if they're going to get Champions League football or not. So that's how I think he'll wait till the end of the season. But he got this game off with the penalty. And I don't think he's showing any less enthusiasm because he's not signed this contract than he did a few games at the back end of last season. I mean, he went absolutely mad and shaking his fist because he'd won a throw-in.
Yeah, and you know what? I think with Yuri, it's one thing with Yuri is that I think he loves the club, and as much as we all know he's probably going to end up leaving, I know that he puts in 100% every single time he steps onto the pitch. So, that's the one thing I think that every single supporter loves about Tielemans is that, he's dedicated 100% every time he steps foot onto the field. And that's just something that you really, really do appreciate in a player, because you don't get that from everyone. And, like you kind of mentioned, we all know he's going to leave. It sucks to say because he's a great player. He's definitely a fan favorite, but that's just part of the game. And no matter where he goes, I feel like he's going to get that support from Leicester City, fans, across the globe. And he's brought some incredible memories to the club, and delivering an FA Cup is one of many. But wherever he ends up, it's where he goes. And I'm not gonna get all frustrated about him leaving, because we all kind of suspect it's going to happen one way or another. Definitely in the summer. I don't think it's going to happen now unless someone offers up like 400 billion pounds.
Yeah, no, I agree totally. But Zach, I mean, if people that are moaning about how Tielemans, or that in their eyes that he's not performing, I mean, look how Mahrez left. He was having a strop. He'd camped out at Paris airport in case his agent rang and said, get on a flight to here because they want to sign you. He was off with, and I'm not decrying, anybody's health problems, but, he wasn't up to playing. So he missed 2 or 3 games, which may have cost us Europe that season. Mm-hmm. I just think players, I mean, the guy wasn't born in Leicester. He hasn't got any loyalty to Leicester. It's a job to them. And all I want to do is say to players, while you're here, give us your 110%. And when you leave with dignity. Mahrez didn't. Drinkwater didn't. Kanté was a little bit, it was all he could do to eventually pen a thank you letter. And I'm thinking, like, if he goes and he goes in a nice way, we'll always love him and appreciate him.
Yes, I agree with you on that. Just to kind of touch on what Alex says, delivering an FA Cup is going to be a memory that a lot of us are going to remember about Tielemans, no matter what window he leaves. But I really think that he is giving his all, despite some of the performances on the pitch, like as a whole, as a team.
Yeah, no, I agree totally. And the good thing about this win was, of course, that we didn't become the first holders to get knocked out at the first stage since Arsenal. So Arsenal still hold that record. Hey, Arsenal. Yeah, we've not taken that off you. So we've got an East Midlands derby. We've not had one of those for a long time. Forest in a couple of weeks.
That's going to be exciting.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remain optimistic on it because of our recent run of form. So try to remain optimistic, but it's going to be an exciting game nonetheless.
Again, come back to you then, Zach. Yes, I know totally what Alex says there, but sometimes it's how you approach the cups. And if you look at this as a bit of a distraction from our league form, which isn't bad, and we've got it's bad. We look at it and think, yep, this is bad. We've still got 18 games to play, which is virtually half the season. But we can look at these sort of things, and if we can win a few games in the cup, it will buoy us up, won't it?
Yes, and also just as a prestige point, because if let's say we did not win the FA Cup last year, and we advance through the rounds and leave in the let's say the quarters, it would be seen as, okay, well, Leicester tried and we just didn't advance. With us being the title holders, it's added a little bit more pressure to not only to the squad but to the Brandon, to everybody, to say, hey, we are defending this trophy that we haven't won since we were founded. We have to show up more for these cup matches, regardless of, let's say, who we have on the squad, where we're going, who we're facing. And I think with now the next cup tie against Forest, it's definitely heightened that sense of urgency of, we have to do something. We have to show that we're not just going to be a one-off, win one or two matches, and then that's it. We have to have a good defense, and that also will help us with, okay, we know what to expect against other competitions. Let's see what this can translate to the later end of the season, to see we can try out some new players, but also just in Europe all together. Since we're already out of the Carabao, it's just, this is some of our few opportunities to win a trophy this season.
Unfortunately, I've got to play this because as much as I not wanted to look forward to talking about the month, I really didn't want to talk about this game. So I've got to give this a... because our first game of the year in the Premier League, Leicester City 2, Tottenham Hotspur 3. I was absolutely fuming. And what made it worse was the fact that when I'm watching the game live, I've got it on because it's on a stick in my lounge. And I do all this in, if you like, my man cave, if you like, with all my Leicester stuff up. And I'd come in at the end of the game and I was tapping at the fact that we'd won and I was getting everything ready to go. And I could hear the noise from the telly. And I was still putting the game thing up saying we were 2-1, and we've got the 3 points. And it had gone to 3. I went back in just to double check it was 3-2. And I'm like, what? I mean, we lose to Tottenham. I think I said before to you, Alex, didn't I? I get losing. It's part of the game. And Tottenham are sort of our bogey club like Arsenal used to be. But to lose in that way.
I don't know if I've been that upset about a result. I literally went through the 5 stages of grief in like a span of like 40 seconds. And then I just reverted back to anger. And like I stayed at anger for probably like a good solid few hours until I finally hit like the acceptance. And then I went right back to anger again. Like that's how that result kind of left me. It's such an infuriating result because you had the 3 points for the taking, and then it was just an absolute utter collapse. And like I already know that like it reminded, like I can't remember who I was talking to, but it reminded me of when we watched the Bournemouth game, where like you expected to win and you blew it. You're like a complete bottle job. So like this match, like I don't even like, I'm trying to like remain calm because even like talking about it, it's just like, it was just one of those matches. And it's one of those games where I really hope where we can really just forget about it. Like I don't want, that's like I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to think about it. Yeah. So many more matches this season to really analyze and whatnot. I really just hope like this is the match this year that we go, we were bad. It was horrible. Let's never speak of it again.
And there's a few of those games this season, so it's got to be bad to top that list, really. But I mean, Zach, I did sort of. I have a half an hour gap between the match, or 45 minutes between the match finishing and going live with the post-match show, and that usually gives me time to sort of calm down. I didn't. I've got to be honest with you, and I went on and I had a good. I've even got a sort of a jingle for it for my rants, and I went absolutely mad. And Tottenham fans were coming on and going like, "Well, you didn't deserve it. We should have had it. You're not being very nice, or taking it, as bad." But I went, when you lose like that, I'm not going to come on half an hour later and go, "You know what, Spurs? Well done on that." So I'm just going to say, "F off, Spurs." Why could we not have had that referee from AFCON playing that game? We'd have stopped at 85 minutes and we'd have gone off 2-1 up.
So I was working during the Tottenham match. So whenever I got in my car, I got to the store I was working at, I figured, okay, we're up 2-1. It'll be calm. Just go and just do what I need to go do. Because I normally would have let's say a radio or something like that would kind of play YouTube audio. And then all of a sudden I went in, I had to go grab something out of my walk-in, and when I saw it was 3-2 at full time, I was like, "What?" Went back to my walk-in, said a couple things, and then came back out, and I was just fuming for several hours. The other thing too is I knew as soon as that full-time whistle went, I was expecting a bunch of text messages from some mates of mine that also support Spurs. They were like, "So how's that bottle job? Hey, hey, is Brendan treating you well?" And I was expecting the worst. And even then, I still absolutely fuming after that match. It's like, how can we throw such a thing like that away? It's like, how can we just utterly collapse in just 2 minutes?
We've got a new record though, haven't we, Alex? No team has been in front for so long, which was 95 minutes, and then lost the game. I don't think it's a record we actually want though.
No, it's like one of those records where someone's trying to hand you the award and you've done everything in your power to reject it. Literally hiding your arms in your shirt and being like, "I don't have arms," but they somehow figured a way to Velcro it onto your chest. That's the type of way that I view this award. It's it's like having a demerit on your head. Congratulations, boop. Everybody can see it. You can't get rid of it. That's how I feel about that.
It is bad. Just a quick hello to Rene. How are you, sir? Welcome along. Thanks for joining us. And Mike is a Man United fan. But apart from that, how are you feeling? You're going to have to take on Reese or Niall in the quiz in a couple of weeks. So it says no. Right. Let's just get this right, Mike. And he knows it's a bugbear of mine. And he only says this to wind me up. I don't call it the Community Shield. It's the English Super Cup. Okay, let's just get that right now. If you're going to mention it on this channel, we call it the English Super Cup. That's what they have in Spain. It's the champions versus the FA Cup winners. Therefore, it is the Super Cup. I tell you what gets me annoyed, Zach, and I suppose we've sort of brought it on ourselves, but because of the fact that we finished fifth 2 seasons running, having been odds on for a top 4, that we're known as Brendan's bottlers. And every time we lose a game now, they go and say, "You bottled it again," and I'm like, "No." You lose a game, it doesn't mean you bottled it, and it was a Chelsea fan, and I'm saying, did you bottle the FA Cup because you lost it? But we're I suppose for a while we're going to be stuck with that, aren't we?
Yes, unfortunately, it's like, as Alex said, it's like losing happens. It's the matter of how you lose is what really upset us, and that's how. If I can say this, it's that's how me and Alex first met, was because we all got together on Twitter after Bournemouth, and we were just fuming and fuming and fuming. And it still just brings a sore spot to us all with that Bournemouth match. Yeah. And I think this Spurs match is going to be...
I was there, mate. I was there. Don't remind me. Yeah, it does. It does totally. We then had to get over that. I was a bit worried because we got Brighton, and I was a bit worried because I think a lot of people have underestimated Brighton. I'm not certainly not climbing onto this, Alex. This Graham Potter is the next coming of Jesus, which people seem to have him. Yes, he did something. He won something in Sweden, but I don't know how good the Swedish football in the Swedish league. He's mid-table at the moment this season. He's not a bad manager, but he isn't this, I would say, this the next England manager at this point, etc., etc. So I was a bit worried, and we'd lost them earlier on in the season. That I was worried about hosting Brighton. Again, Danny Welbeck came back to haunt us.
Yeah, you know what? Like, the biggest thing for me is that I don't take a lot of clubs for granted. Like, I really go into matches very optimistic because, especially this season, any club could beat any club. And I think that's one thing that we've kind of mentioned over. It seems like we've mentioned it a few times already today. But Brighton is one of those clubs, especially this year, where, you know, they're ninth in the table. Like, let's be serious here. Like, they're not like in the bottom half. Like, they're better than us this year. So, you know, you have to give them credit for that. And, you know, going into this match, you know, we were all hands on deck that first half. Like, we should have capitalized at least a few more times. Like, we could have had the game at the end of the first 45. But, you know, unfortunately, there was we couldn't capitalize. And, you know, that second half came out, Daka scoring in the first minute was fantastic. But all of a sudden, we parked the bus. Like, we really did. You know, we turned it into a back five. And just ever since then, we just let Brighton attack. And, you know, honestly, I felt like I wasn't watching Brighton. I felt like I was watching Man City or one of the likes of the top four clubs, because they were just all hands on deck, attacking. And, you know, when they eventually, you know, tied it up at that point, the optimism went to, can we hold on to this? Because the rate of our play of late has been like, you know, we're probably going to lose this. And for the last 10 minutes or so, you know, I just ended up sitting there being like, okay, when is it going to happen? And without Schmeichel and, you know, some very lucky bounces and Brighton unable to finish because they had chances and they just couldn't capitalize off of those. You know, we could have easily be talking about, you know, a loss here instead of, you know, pulling out that 1 point. And at the end of the day, I'll take the point. You know, every point matters right now.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, let's just hope that we can somehow turn it around. I know that with international duty, you know, it seems like whenever we go on international break, we kind of come out the next game and pull out a lemon. So let's hope this time around we really turn that around and really are able to capitalize in the win category once this international break, you know, ends.
Yeah, I mean, you could see once Welbeck had scored that there was that dread coming over the Leicester players, like, my God, are we going to do this again, Zach? But Brendan took a lot of criticism, but always, you know, fans are saying, well, if we go 1-0 up after, you know, 30 minutes, he's trying to defend that lead rather than going for the second goal to kill it off. And I kind of get what they're saying, because, you know, the best form of defense is attack. And, you know, we've got one striker, Daku, scored a goal, and he's on form at the moment. And we've suddenly got him coming off. And you're like, why? You know, he's not injured or anything like that. He does go very defensive too soon. Do you agree with that, Zach?
Yes. It's like, especially against Brighton, where we beat them in penalties in the Carabao Cup. We lost to them earlier this year. Brighton's always going to be a team that we can never predict, but they also seem to have our number on no matter what the competition is, no matter if it's home or away. And once we went up 1-0, it's like, okay, we should have had a second one in the first half. We should have at least put a second goal in just to make sure that at least it's comfortable. If, let's say, if we do concede one, it happens. But it's just once we scored and all of a sudden we're going to park the bus, it was just, why are we doing this? Why are we giving Brighton so many opportunities with Welbeck, with Mopé? Giving them opportunities where they're just pepper a goal and then all of a sudden just once it went in, I'm thinking, oh no, not again, not again. I was watching this match with my wife, and she just looked at me and goes, is it going to happen again? I'm like, I hope to God not.
Yeah.
And just, yes, I'm glad we got a point, but it should have been 3. And it was, I felt like this match was a loss in my book, because it's just how late we just constantly give up goals, and just how we just had no answer after the 65th, 70th minute.
It is frustrating, and a point probably didn't do either of us much good. But at the start of the season, like you said, Alex, you would look at Brighton and go, that should be a game that we should win, and we probably didn't give them or appreciate what a good a season they were going to have. And this season of all, like we said before, on the day anybody can beat anybody. But I want to move on now to something that's non-existent, I think, as far as we are concerned this year. But we'll do it straight after this.
Watch us on YouTube. Listen on your favourite podcast platform, or ask your smart speaker to play the podcast Leicester Till I Die.
Subscribe, like, follow, and join in now.
Yeah, if you are watching on YouTube or Facebook, Twitter, get over to YouTube and please subscribe. It does help the channel. So that we're coming on to the transfer window, which I think is not even been open for us. We've let a couple of players go. Yes, exactly. Out on loan. Now, I did put this out on Twitter earlier, so I'm just going to bring it up there. So after 2 COVID hit seasons and our owners being in the travel business, the coffers are empty for this window. But players are slowly starting to return from injury. What would you sooner your club do? Take out big loans and put the club in debt, or stick with what we have because we know players are going to be coming back, etc., and look at it, in the summer for next season? It's just short of 79%, and I think it's a sensible option. Stick with what we've got. Because I think we've just got to accept this season as being one of those seasons.
I agree with you on that. It's like, as we kind of discussed during the pre-show, one of the other big contentions that other supporters have that was expressed online is King Power running out of money? Even though, yes, Thailand has been hit hard with COVID restrictions and also with just other factors as well. It's tourism starting to come back to Thailand, and more and more people are going to be traveling overseas to go to the airports, and King Power is getting the revenue again. But I also believe that they probably learned the lessons of the past, to where they did big signings when they initially bought the club and realized how bad they were, or they just don't want to go suffer through another administration process because of this big spending they did, not only for just buying big players, but also with Seagrave and the other financial contributions they made. And I just found out recently that also the King Power ownership has started heavily investing in the Thailand national team, both men's and women's sides, with training grounds. So they're probably wanting to go and make sure that Leicester can still do what they can as a self-sustaining business, and not necessarily just go out and just spend big and just put ourselves in a financial freefall in case, let's say, crowds are not allowed at the grounds again, or something happens to where revenue is just cut drastically more. So I think by doing what we're doing will be a sensible move.
Indeed. And Alex, I mean, as Zach said there, our owners are in the tourism business. When they're not in oil, they're in hotels, they're in airports, and that, as we know, has been hit. And I wouldn't want anything. We've been in administration in this club before. We know that's why the owners had to come in and buy the stadium back for us, because we lost that when we went into administration. We've got to talk, and we mentioned before about Newcastle. Totally understand how Newcastle hated Mike Ashley, but he left them financially in a good position, and we can't just, we have got a few loans out anyway, but we can't just go down that road and risk losing everything.
No, and that's the thing. Like, you know what? Like, I think we've kind of talked about it beforehand, and I feel like we're in this season where we're not going to finish in the top four. We're not going to get relegated, so we're going to be somewhere in the middle. It's just going to be that season, and there's no point of going out in the January window when price for players is doubled or tripled what their normal cost would what they would normally cost, and go out and spend big. There really is no rhyme or reason for it. We're looking at a window right now where if we're bringing a player, he's going to come in on loan. Simple as that. Is a player going to come in on loan? I wouldn't even be shocked if we do bring a player in on loan because the funds aren't there. So when you look at, you just got to play it smart because I was like we were talking before we started recording, summertime's going to come around. The window's going to open. Let's be serious. We've talked about it already. Tielemans probably going to leave. He's going to fetch he's going to fetch a good return. Possibly a few other players leave who could fetch other good returns. We could be looking at a summer window where we have plenty of cash to spend, to really buffer up our squad again. So, do you deal with 1 year of frustration and struggling instead of, going back into debt? I'd do that 100 times, no questions asked, because at the end of the day, why go in debt when you don't have to?
Yeah. No, totally. I mean, there's only really Newcastle that are seeming to be spending big amount of money. And Mike says here, could this loss of money bring administration back to the club? No, because they're so good. I always say businessmen run football clubs. Supposedly they're businessmen. They're supposed to run them like their businesses, but they don't. They build them like a favourite hobby, and they just throw money. Our owners are well, the company was well run, and they said, in fairness to Brendan, they said right from the start, Zach, we need a centre back, but we're only going to get one in on loan, and he hasn't said anything different to that, and and I think we all understand why that is the case.
And that's one thing that I did see for pretty much as soon as the window began to open, is Brendan saying, this is what we need, but I just don't know how we can do it. And with him saying that up front at the beginning of the window, instead of saying, oh, we're going to do this, and then turns out we came home with nothing. That's one thing I will appreciate Brendan saying, at least up front, this is the reality of the situation, instead of trying to string everybody along and saying, oh, we're going to do this, and then just come out with nothing.
Yes. I mean, I remember last time we were in this position, we ended up with Ryan Bennett, which he was bad, but I don't think he was bad as everybody else was saying. But I just think, you knocking on people's door and saying, like, can we borrow your central defender? You're going to end up with not the best because you're only going to take him on loan for 6 months. So like with Ryan Bennett, it's going to be somebody else's sort of, substitute players, if you like, that they keep on the bench. But Alex, the problem for me as well is that money, because if anybody was available for us to buy, they know, I think, that, well, Newcastle might pop along. And if Newcastle knock on the door, they're just going to add 5 million onto the price anyway, because they know they can afford it. And that is going to affect a lot of other teams.
Yeah, it does. But at the same time, I feel like when you look at it in the sense of, like, Newcastle goes to a club and approaches them and it says, hey, we're interested in this player, they might quote them for a higher price. And the only reason is they know they have money. Leicester City right now doesn't have any money. Our transfer budget's pretty much shot after bringing Vestergaard, late in the summer window. So, for us, it might be lower, but they might not be willing to sell to us prior, mainly because you have all these other clubs that are willing to spend extra money. So it complicates things because, we're kind of tied to, whatever funds we do have. So, like I said, this window is kind of a write-off for us, as weird as it sounds, because we just don't have the funds in order to bring in any players whatsoever. And I feel like, when the summertime does come and, the window opens and, if we do see players leave, it might change again, because all of a sudden we have these funds if we go to a couple of clubs and be like, hey, we're interested in this player, they go, we know you got X amount of dollars for, X, Y, and Z. It's going to be an extra 15 mil for this guy. And you're like, what? But in January, he was 25 million cheaper. Like, what's going on here? So
that's business. I get, I get that. That's business, as annoying as it is. But yeah, I mean, we did spend, and I'm going to stick with you if you don't mind for this one, Alex, because we touched on it earlier. And that's Vestergaard. I mean, we wouldn't have bought Vestergaard, I don't believe, if Fofana hadn't got injured. And you got to admire the club first of all for acting within a week of him sort of getting the broken leg for Fofana. We'd got Vestergaard in. Problem was that he'd come from Southampton, a team that we stuck 9 goals past. He was in that game. Ryan Bennett's got an excuse. He got sent off after 17 minutes. So he could say, wasn't there, it wasn't me. It was only 1-0 when I went off. But so that, I think, that was 15 million that we weren't intending on spending. And if you do go out and get another centre back, when everybody's back and fit, and there will hopefully come that time, we're just going to have a team of defenders.
Yeah, I really do look at Vestergaard as a panic buy. Like, case in point, with Fofana going out, Evans was dealing with injuries. It just seemed like the logical next step in looking for a center back. And, I feel like there would be plenty other options in order to get a center back. But spending 15 million on Vestergaard and then seeing what he's produced is quite upsetting. The fact that you're looking at a player who is as tall as anything, and he can't, he's an aerial, he's not an aerial threat. He brings up more problems in the air as much as he does on the ground. And that's concerning considering, like I said, his height. You're having players slot in ahead of him who are not familiar possibly with the positioning. Like for me personally, I'd rather see Chowdhury in his position at center back prior to putting in Vestergaard. So it's quite frustrating to see because, like, simply put, Vestergaard was a panic buy. And if we took maybe an extra day or two to really look at the situation after the Fofana injury and be like, do we really want to spend 15 million here? I think there was options within the club that you could have utilized much better.
Yes.
Who's to say that we used a player like Brunt or something? These up and coming kids. These young talents being like, we're strapped for cash. We don't want to spend our remaining transfer budget on a player. Why don't we use one of our younger kids to like? I'm just spitballing here. But it really has caused an issue because we're in this January window now where we don't have a transfer budget. Like there's nothing, and we're looking at where we're seeing issues and we can't resolve those issues, and we still look at our center back issues and they're still there, and it's like, well, Vestergaard's not really providing any more, isn't fixing this solution. It's like watching a massive leak occur from like a pool or something, and you're slapping on a piece of tape that has no business being the tape that you're supposed to use. So it's like using painter's tape on like a water spill on a huge crack and water's flowing out. The painter's tape ain't going to do much for it. So it's frustrating because it just seems like at the end of the window, at the end of the summer window, it seemed like, for me personally, and I feel like there's plenty of people across Twitter that are saying that we had such a successful window. And you look at that now, 6 months later, give or take, and you go, because we did bring in some promising players, but some of those players turned out to be a bust. And Vestergaard seems to be like the king of that right now.
We do like to always have one scapegoat at Leicester, though. But Zach, Alex made the point there, and I thought Chowdhury played really well when he was asked to play in that role. And whether that was just the fact that, his attitude was, I'm going to just kick this ball into Rosette to get it away rather than pass it about the back a few times. But Brendan Rodgers came out and said great things about Chowdhury and playing in that role, and then doesn't play him in the next game.
it's nuts. It's like I just wish that there was a lot more consistency in the back. And if he was doing good in that role and Vestergaard wasn't, we should have like tried it again. It's like, hey, you did well in this role. Let's go ahead and put you back in there, Hamza. And it's just sometimes I don't know what he's thinking.
I think we all do that. I mean, Mike said this here. You have to understand, like Chris just said, how impactful Wesley Fofana's injury has been. It's been the occurrence of Vestergaard and also now being a lot more stale in the defence. And I think you got to add into that as well the fact that there hasn't been a settled defence. I don't think we played the same back two games running this season. And I think for me, Fofana's injury has had as much as more probably of an impact than Van Dijk's did at Liverpool.
I agree. Go ahead, Alex.
Go ahead.
So I feel like that with Fofana's injury, it just felt like we were kind of resting our defense on him, especially with we're having some issues with Soyuncu, either through injury, through international duty, or red cards from the previous season. It's just we were thinking, okay, he's going to be our shining spot of the defense. And once Fofana went out, it's like we don't know what we're going to do. So as Alex said, we brought in Vestergaard, trying all these different combinations between 20 to 30 different pairings in all competitions for the defense. There's not a way for anyone to gel. There's not any way for anybody to figure out, hey, you do good at this, let me go ahead and do this. Everyone's just trying to figure out their role practically every single match, and that's what's setting us up for failure.
Yeah. I mean, Alex, you were nodding in agreement there. I mean, Bertrand has had an operation. And he's disappointed me because pre-season he looked good. We've still got Piera out. We've got Castagna out still. Fofana's on the edge. Like I say, all these things in a normal season, if we'd had the team that should have been available to us, I think we're looking at 5th or 6th in the league at the moment.
Oh, absolutely. I think the injury crisis that we've had is it's super, it sucks because, it's something that you just can't control. But at the end of the day, you can't really blame injuries for where you are in the table. One of the things that I was actually thinking of is that, as us as supporters of Leicester City, we always made the point that Johnny Evans was the quarterback on the D line. And I think what this season has really shown me is that for sure Evans brings so much, but I really do think that Wesley Fofana is the glue that keeps that that back four together. And I say that because when Johnny Evans came back, we were still a disaster on defense. Yes. And that's one thing that really shocked me because I always was saying, Evans is the one that's going to keep us together. Evans is the quarterback. He's the general. He gets everyone in the line. But when Evans came back, nothing really fixed. It was like, oh, we're just as bad with Evans as we were without him. So I'm very interested to see that, if Fofana is fully fit eventually and he can come back into the side, we'll see if he could actually, figure this defense out and kind of sort it all out. Because that's the curiosity that I have now is that, well, clearly Evans isn't the only one that kind of that has this defense sorted. If Fofana comes in and sorts it out, then we figured it out. But I'm going to remain in judgment until I actually see it happen because I've known to bite myself, bite myself on numerous occasions. So it'll be interesting to see. But I think Fofana is critical, absolutely critical for our club.
Well, I mean, as Rennie said there, Zach, and we'll bring it to a close with this and one more question. Fofana's been linked with a move away, even though he's not playing. What have you? So hopefully we'll see him. But what I want to end is, and I don't know if it was Michael, somebody said to me the other day, would you take Maguire back? Now, well, I actually said not for £80 million. I wouldn't, no, but I don't think that Man United got the Maguire or have the Maguire now that we sold them. And I think had he stayed at Leicester, and I understand him wanting to go to Man United, of course, but I think had he stayed at Leicester, it would have probably kept his head on the ground a bit more. I think you're both nodding your head, but Zach, first of all, would you take him back? If it was, let's say, it was like 30 million.
I would probably say no more than 20 to 25 million if we took him back.
Mm. And Alex?
I would roll in a broken fridge, and that would be my offer.
We could offer them Perez. We'd swap him for Perez, maybe.
Yeah, he's actually in the fridge. You open the fridge, and he's in there. And he has like the confetti, and he throws it in the air, and that's like the swap.
Yeah. Mike says there, now you can have him for free, Chris. Well, like I say, I don't think they did get one season out of him, but I think his head has been turned. Guys, as always, thank you very much. We'll do it again in a month's time. Let's hope we've got a nicer February to look at, maybe a couple of European wins. And Mike says, he doesn't actually say it, he says it in a different way, but I won't read that out. But he says, go away, they don't want Perez, which I kind of get. But yeah, hopefully we're going to be looking at the end of February, maybe a couple of European wins through to the next round, and maybe still in the FA Cup. But first of all, let's one at a time. Zach, how can people find you?
So I can be found on Twitter and Instagram at the handle that's displayed on screen, Splunk ATO. I will discuss not only things about Leicester City, but also some things about the MLS.
Yeah, brilliant. And Alex, how can people find you?
So you can find me on Twitter, Canadian_Foxes. I speak and talk about everything Leicester City, and with the Canadian soccer or Canadian football club as well, national team as we trudge along to Qatar for the World Cup this year.
Brilliant. Rich, you mentioned Maguire, and all the Man United fans come out the woodwork. Say, hi, Rich. I was trying to take him back, but my two colleagues didn't want him, and I tried to throw you in. What about Mike? I know you didn't want Perez. What if we do a deal? 2 for 1, Perez and Vestergaard for Maguire. I think that's a fair deal, isn't it? But, guys, thanks so much for popping on and giving up your time, and really do appreciate it. Guys, they are Leicester fans. Give them a follow on Twitter. The handle's there. The handle's also in the description on the YouTube channel as well. Be sure to give them a follow. Thanks very much, guys, and I will see you in a month's time.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Cheers. Thanks so much, guys. So thanks to Alex, thanks to Zach there, giving up their time from the other side of the pond. And thanks to everybody for popping in, Mike. Thanks for your comments. I'm not showing you previous comment. I am not. It is swearing. You're a very, very naughty boy. I'm disappointed in you, Michael. Disappointed. I'm going to be back in 50 minutes, and we're going to have the Big Fat Football Quiz, Part 1. Wolves. We're running out of teams in the Premier League. We're coming up to the final table. We had Crystal Palace last week. Didn't do quite well, came bottom. Wolves, Sweet and Sour Soccer are going to be coming on and answering the questions. Can they knock Anki off the top? We will find out in an hour. Thanks very much for watching. Stay safe, everybody. I'm not even going to ask what you mean by that, Mike. Knowing you, Mike, it probably isn't good. It isn't good. We're going to be back in 50 minutes with the quiz. I'll see you then. Thanks for watching, and thanks for joining in and for listening as well. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching Leicester Till I Die. This is Chris saying goodbye, and see you next time.
That's all, folks. Come on! pitch. They think it's all over. It is now.